Hello everybody, welcome and welcome back. I am CrisTheGirl. Today we find ourselves at Walt Disney World, specifically at Epcot. I want to finally talk about Journey into Imagination as well as Captain EO. For those of you who don't know, I used to be a cast member here at Walt Disney World, and one of the rides that I used to work was Journey into Imagination, as well as, at the time, Captain EO. So this was late 2010, early 2011 time frame. So yeah, we're going to talk about that today. I also want to go over a bit of the troubled history of that pavilion. We're going to talk about the lore. It's going to be a good old-fashioned deep dive video. I'm going to share some cast member stories as well and some fun things, hopefully some things that maybe you've never heard before. And yeah, just enjoy this beautiful day here in Florida, talking about one of the greatest and yet most troubled pavilions and areas in all of Disney history. That is to say, the Imagination Pavilion. So, without further ado, thank you so much for clicking on the video. Really hope that you enjoy it. And let's go. Also gotta point out that I brought my little Figment along with me, my old boss. He's here. He's gotta be here, of course, hanging out amongst the flowers. Hi, Figment. Before we go on the ride and do all of that good stuff, I gotta set the scene here for you. So if you have no idea what Journey into Imagination is, I'm gonna just briefly sort of go over the general idea of it. So the first iteration of this ride began almost at park opening, not quite park opening, but just a bit after Epcot opened to the public, and this ride was amazing. It featured the Dreamfinder and Figment, and you basically went through all of these different little scenes, and it was a beautiful ride. It basically was exactly what it sounded like. Journey into Imagination. There was a art scene, there was a theater scene, there was a horror scene even. It was so stinking cool. If you have never seen any ride footage of it before, if you've never been on the ride, if you've never seen photos of it, definitely either pause this video and go look it up and come back, please. Please come back. Or, yeah, just watch it after this. I highly would recommend it. That particular version of the ride is what I grew up with as a child. My mom was a cast member here at Disney, and so we went here all the time as kids. And whenever we went to Epcot, Journey into Imagination was a ride that we rode literally every single time, because it was probably, if I had to guess, our absolute most favorite ride on all of Disney property at the time. We rode it a lot. So much so that I actually do have very vivid memories of riding that ride, even though that was a very long time ago. It was beautiful. It is actually widely regarded as probably the most beautiful and immaculate and amazing dark ride that has ever been created. Not only here at Disney, but just like in general. It was gorgeous. People loved this ride. And on top of that too, like, there was the ImageWorks, the imagination stuff at the top of this building here too. It had the iconic rainbow tunnel. If you don't know anything about this pavilion or this ride or anything like that, you probably already can visualize that in your head. It was one of the most photographed things like ever here at Disney, was that rainbow neon tunnel thing. So that was up there, as well as a whole interactive section. People literally would spend like hours at this pavilion because there was so much to do. And the ride on top of that was very long, actually, much longer than the average dark, slow ride is. So with all of that being said, one might ask, well then why did they close it in the first place? Why did they change it? Well, it was about 1998 when that version of the ride closed down, and essentially this ride, as well as many other rides and countries on top of that here at Epcot, had sponsorships. There were big companies that sponsored these rides. The sponsor of the Imagination Pavilion specifically was Kodak at the time. And long story short, because this isn't going to be like the perfect history lesson of this ride or anything like that, it's more so just a casual retelling. Disney hounded and hounded and hounded Kodak for more money to refurb the ride at the time, and they weren't really putting up the funds. And then finally they went ahead and did it, but they decided to go ahead and just scrap the whole entire ride and build something new. So that was both a Kodak and a Michael Eisner sort of decision. They wanted to completely like refurbish it, make it something more quote-unquote hip and cool than what it was before. And so the version of Journey into Your Imagination was born. Now, as I said, or I think I said at the beginning of this video, I actually did go on that version of the ride too, Journey into Your Imagination. And when I say it was an abomination, I'm saying it was an absolute abomination of a ride. They opened it up not very long after they initially closed the first version of Journey into Imagination, and essentially what they did was completely pave over what was already there and take away some of the most beloved elements. Well, take away all of the all of the beloved elements of that ride, including the beautiful Dreamfinder animatronics and his ship and all of that stuff, as well as all of the Figment animatronics. There was no Figment, no Dreamfinder. It was absolutely, totally different from what it was before. And from here, actually, we gotta talk about the Magic Eye Theater right next door to the ride. So at the time, Honey, I Shrunk the Audience was what was playing at this particular theater. And if you don't know what Honey, I Shrunk the Audience is, let me spin you this yarn for you. A lot of explaining that I have to do in this video, I know, and I'm not very good at it, so everybody just bear with me here. But if you've ever seen the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and also Honey, I blew up the kid, Honey, I blew up the something, the kid, is that right? That doesn't sound right. Anyway, it's those movies. That's what Honey, I Shrunk the Audience was based off of. It was almost like a sequel-ish to both of those movies. At the time, this was in the 90s, that was like a huge movie for Disney. It drew in a lot of money and a lot of attention, and it was beloved by 90s people everywhere. So Disney naturally wanted to open up an attraction based off of those movies and capitalize off of that, and thus Honey, I Shrunk the Audience was born. This was back in 1994, by the way. In Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, Rick Moranis' character, Wayne Szalinski, he wins an award, the Inventor of the Year award. Now, this is all the lore here. We're talking the lore of this pavilion, of these rides. He wins Inventor of the Year, and he receives that award from who else but Eric Idle, Dr. Nigel Channing, which, if you've ever been on this current version of the ride, then you know who Dr. Nigel Channing is, because he is a big part of that ride. Eric Idle is a huge part now of the Imagination universe, I guess. So, Dr. Nigel Channing, Eric Idle, he is the head of the Imagination Institute. Again, this is all the lore here. So, he gives Dr. Szalinski, Rick Moranis, he gives him the Inventor of the Year award. Of course, havoc and hilarity ensues during this whole thing, and Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, you could pretty much take it from there and guess what the heck is going to go on in that thing. All of that, the entire movie, is on YouTube. I actually just watched it the other day, and just to remind myself of what it was. So if you want to watch it, that's another one. If you want to pause this, go check it out. I highly would recommend, or watch it after this, would highly recommend. It was terrifying. It was a 4D experience. The whole entire theater moved. It's on hydraulics. It actually still is today. And then they had like all of those classic 4D theater effects, like the stuff spraying out in front of you, and the little air blasts by your ankles and stuff like that. It was terrifying. It was really, really scary. We only did it as a family a handful of times because none of us liked it. None of us. But nonetheless, it was here for a really, really long time. I'm talking, well, yeah, 2010 or 2009 or somewhere in that time, because it ran all the way from 94 up to when they switched it out to Captain EO. Now, all of that is really important because, as I said, Eric Idle's character, Dr. Nigel Channing, is a big part of not only the current iteration of the ride that we have today, but also that journey into your imagination, the Abomination version of the ride in between the old one and the one that we have now. So basically, in that version, Eric Idle, Dr. Nigel Channing, he opens up the Imagination Institute for an open house. We're all welcome to come in. We're going to be their newest test subjects at the Imagination Institute, and they're doing a bunch of tests on imagination, essentially. Again, this is another ride that is on YouTube. I watched it recently just to refresh my memory. It's out there, and so if you want to watch it, again, pause this, go check it out, or check it out after this. It'll make a lot more sense. I don't want to bog down this whole video with just me retelling poorly like what these rides were. But I'm trying to spin this yarn here for you, because it's really important to know all of that to understand why we have the version that we have today. Now, they changed it over. It was either 1999 or 2000. Like I said, I'm not a historian per se. This is just my casual retelling of events. Back in my day, back at the time, when Disney announced that they were refurbing rides, people didn't have a complete panic attack over it. It wasn't that big of a deal because generally we kind of trusted Disney to be able to do good things with what they were doing. And you have to keep in mind, this was before social media, before influencers, before all of that stuff. Disney did not let us know when rides were closing, when it was the last day to ride that particular ride. They didn't let us know what was going in its place. There was radio silence on Disney's part. We're very, very lucky now that they keep us in the loop of what they're doing with their rides nowadays, because that was not always the case. So I don't recall a time when my family rode the first version of the ride and we were like, okay, this is our last time riding this ride. That wasn't a thing. That was not a thing. It was just they're closing it for refurbishment and they're doing something different with it. Okay, well, I guess we'll see what happens. And I remember as a kid riding Journey into Your Imagination and being like, what in God's green earth did they do to this ride, even as a child? People were understandably very, very pissed and upset with what they did. They took out all of the beloved elements of what made Journey into Imagination so good and so special, and just absolutely took a huge steaming dump on it. There's really no other way to put it, to be quite honest. Again, I highly, highly, highly encourage you, if you've never seen ride footage of the original ride, please, if you do anything today, do that. Watch that so you can see, because that's really going to explain it to you how the atrocity of what we have right now and then that middle version was as well, and why people were so angry about it, and rightfully so. They filled it with, they took out everything. Nothing in there is what used to be on the ride, and they filled it with really, really, really cheap, cheesy illusions, and I don't know, it's essentially just like an upgraded version of a dark ride that you would find at a carnival sort of thing. There was no, ironically enough, it completely lacked any sort of imagination. So yeah, it was just really bad. It was really, really bad. People were very, 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 very angry enough to where Disney very quickly shut down Journey into Your Imagination and redid it basically. In less than a year, if I'm not mistaken, if I have my timeline correct, in less than a year they would reopen the ride and into the version that we have today, Journey into Imagination with Figment. Keeping all of these names straight, I swear to goodness, words are hard. So yeah, with that we have the current iteration of the ride that we have today, and sadly we have now been living with this ride for well over 20 years, well over 24 years. It's been in this building for longer than the original version of the ride, and I think that is incredibly, incredibly sad. Essentially, all that they did with the current version of the ride is keep everything from Journey into Your Imagination and basically just add Figment. They just added Figment to, you know, the story of it all, and added also the iconic song One Little Spark by some of the greatest songwriters of all time, the Sherman Brothers, and they added that back in there as well, because I forgot to mention they took out the song too. Like, that's how bad it was. They even took out One Little Spark. And with that is essentially the lore and the somewhat of the history-ish of Journey into Imagination, this pavilion here. Hopefully that all made sense. I'm sorry that took so long, but that was really, really important to this whole entire video. To be honest with you, this is actually the second time that I'm making this video, because my first time around, I really didn't go over the lore and the history enough. And it's actually just really, really incredibly important to understand and to know, and to, you know, to get why we have the ride that we have today. It actually like trickles all the way down to Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, and, you know, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and like all of this 90s stuff. So hopefully that all made sense. Let's go ahead and talk about now. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to talk about obviously the current version of the ride that we have today, as well as my experience here as a cast member. So as far as being a cast member goes, so like I said, I worked here the end of 2010. It was December 2010, literally my first job right out of college. And I think I was here for maybe about 6 months or so. I was part-time, although I worked a ton of hours. I basically worked full-time hours. I was here all the time. And one of the first things that I think of when I think of my time working here at Journey into Imagination was the fact that back in my day, this whole area up here was called Future World. Ooh. And it was so not busy. It was so not busy at the time that they even closed many of the rides over here in Future World early. We're talking 7 o'clock, 2 hours before the park closed. I think there was several reasons why they did that. For one thing, obviously supply and demand. Like none of these rides were hot commodity items, I guess, so they just felt the need to close them early because it was deader than a doornail over here. But also I think at the time, the countries and like drinking around the world and all of that stuff wasn't as big of a deal as it is now. So they kind of were like pushing people to go back into the countries and explore that area too. So I think there was a few reasons. Those are honestly my theories. I don't actually know the real reason, but that's what I'm guessing. In any case, Journey into Imagination was one of those rides that closed early at 7 o'clock at the time. And one of the positions that we had to do from time to time, if you were assigned it, was actually sit out here, like in this area in here, and chill from 7 to 9 p.m. and basically tell people, yeah, this ride is closed. This whole area is closed, so see you later. And it was not fun. It was not fun in the sense that a lot of people got understandably pretty mad about that. I can't tell you how many times I got, but this was the one and only ride that my family and I wanted to ride this entire trip. You just ruined our whole vacation because it's closed now. which is a really, really great excuse, especially because if it's the one ride that you wanted to ride on this whole entire vacation, you probably shouldn't have saved it till the last minute of your vacation, but alrighty. Anyways, that wasn't great. I got a lot of angry guests. Not everybody was angry. Some people managed to hold in their emotions and be mature adults about it. But understandably, a lot of people were angry. Obviously, there were a lot of signs around here saying that certain rides would close at 7 o'clock. It's all over the maps. It's all over the timesheets, all of that stuff. But we all know when people are on vacation, they don't like to read things. So, yeah, it was but on the other hand, for the most part, it was pretty quiet back here. Like I said, deader than a doornail, more or less. So it's just a lot of like standing around, listening to the music, just kind of hanging out. And it wasn't too bad. So I don't know. I went on a whole diatribe about that one position, and for some reason, like I said, that's just one of the things that like hits my memory the most is telling people that this area used to close early. So I don't know. But that's also like, you know, that's Disney history, right? They would not ever dare close this section of the park 2 hours earlier before the whole entire park closed. Like, that's like unheard of now. So I don't know, just a little bit of interesting trivia, I suppose. Also, like essentially the rest of Epcot, I sure do miss the old music that they used to play here. Honestly, the only thing that I miss about Journey into Your Imagination was the music. The music on the ride slapped. All right, we're finally going to head inside of the ride now. Looks like it's about a 15-minute wait as of the time of this recording. It's Easter weekend, so it's a little bit busier here, but that's fine. We're not in a hurry. Anyway, this particular deep dive, as far as operating the ride goes, is not going to be super, super in-depth because TBH, it's not a complicated ride to operate. There's not a whole lot of like really interesting tidbits that I can really share with you all. It's a pretty standard ride. Your typical greeter, your typical, I don't know, fast pass person, although back in my day we didn't have fast pass for this ride, as well as, you know, the people that actually operate the ride, the unload, the load, all of that stuff. Honestly, no, the grouper position, like all of that stuff, it's standard. Very, very, very standard. It's a very easy ride to operate. So as far as all of that goes, I don't have too much to share. So like I said earlier, essentially what they did was completely repave the old ride track for this. So there are parts of this queue in here and the end of the queue, the unload area, which literally you're going to be walking on old ride track, the old ride system for this ride, which is pretty dang sad. But anyway, this room in here, the reception room, like I said, the lore of this all, we are in the Imagination Institute right now. They're having an open house. Instead of us being test subjects, though, we are just coming here to visit the sensory labs that they have, touch, taste, sight, smell, and sound labs, as well as the image works. So there's none of that story left in here, but that is okay. It's still the Imagination Institute, and it's still an open house. You see Weibo over here too. It says 97th Annual Inventor of the Year Award. Again, going all the way back to Honey, I Shrunk the Audience with that Inventor of the Year presented to Professor Philip Brainard, which is Robin Williams' character in Flubber. Also want to point out the reception desk in here, which, again, back in my day when I worked this ride, one of the things that we had occasionally was something called a magical moment. I don't think they do those anymore, but essentially it's a time when you're allowed it as a cast member to go out into the public and do a magical moment. It could be interacting with a guest in a special way, or just doing something like special, out of the norm, quote unquote. And one of the things that you could do was sit at the reception desk here, greet the guests as they come in to the Imagination Institute, using all of that theming and such. And yeah, I did it a couple times, but honestly, not too much. It wasn't really my jam, but it was still a thing that you could do. Also got to point out the Inventor of the Year award recipients there. There's Rick Moranis there, Robin Williams, and of course, Eric Idle. This door here, most of the doors that you see on this ride and in the queue, they don't actually go anywhere, but this door is one of the few that actually does. The Flubber storage room is actually a cast member area, as we see a cast member popping out there. So that is where the break room is. Now, I'm pointing this out. That doesn't mean go on in there. It's not an invitation. I'm just simply pointing it out. The break room for the cast members here is right behind that door. Through this cage here, honestly, I wish I could say that there's some really cool, like, Easter eggs and, like, interesting things to see. As far as I know, not really. It's just literally, like, old computer parts and just boring stuff like that to make it seem kind of interesting. There probably is Easter eggs in there, but honestly, I have no idea. There is a Buzz Lightyear, though, inside of the cage, so I don't know. There's that. So at this point in the queue, you can see that it slopes upward a little bit. At this point, we are walking on the old ride track, and if you've ever walked along this queue before, you may have noticed like a hollow sound as you walk along it. That's why they literally didn't take anything out. All of that stuff is still underneath us today. They just literally paved directly on top of it. Forgot to mention too that everyone who works here is a scientist. They work at the Imagination Institute. That's the lore of it all. So again, back in my day, we used to have to wear lab coats. And I'll put a picture up on the screen there for you of what I used to look like working here at this ride. I used to have to wear a lab coat to go with the theming of it all, working at the Imagination Institute. But they don't have to do that anymore, and probably thankfully for them, because, you know, it's Florida. It's pretty hot out. Also, I'm not going to film the entire ride. There's a few things that I'm going to point out on the ride, but I'm not going to film absolutely everything. Once again, that ride footage is out there. It's been filmed 1,000 times before, and I don't want to bog this video down with just a whole complete ride through of the ride. So yeah, we're gonna go on it, and I'll point out a couple of things, and yeah, let's go see Figment. First thing I want to point out, pro tip, the best seat in the entire ride is this one right here, row number 5. The third vehicle in the front row is the best seat in the house. You'll get the best view of Figment. You get the best audio of the ride too. So, hooray, we did it. We're in row 5. Can start appearing, and each of us imagines different things. Red tennis shoes down here for the computer who wore tennis shoes. Right around this corner, here's the lab coats that we used to have to wear. Right there. There's another spot too where they're hanging up actual lab coats. Butterfly here is also an old effect from the Journey into Your Imagination ride. They just kept it there. Decided to keep it. And now as we head into the smell lab here, there's another set of lab coats right here on the side of the wall. Yay, there they are. Also, the skunk smell that they use is actually burnt coffee. And it smells pretty good, I like it. Yeah, that's good coffee. And as we go into the upside down area, all of this was kept in from the Journey into Your Imagination ride as well. They just painted it a bunch of Figment colors and added some Figments in here. So yeah, all of this was the same too. All right, we are now off of the ride. Most of the ride track in there is the exact same as the original ride, but they did cut the ending portion of it, the finale portion of the original ride, as well as the unload section. So that is all of what we are standing on right now. And again, if you I don't know if you can hear that, but it's a hollow sound in here. This is literally paved over the old ride systems. And ImageWorks is a huge part of that too. With the first version of the ride, all of this again was the finale scene of the original version as well as the unload section. And then the interactive part was on the second level where the DVC, the Disney Vacation Club lounge is now. So none of this was here for the first version, but it was here for the second version, Journey into Your Imagination, and obviously what we have right now too. This will make a lot more sense if you ever rode the first version of the ride and or seen ride footage of it, but there was a classic turnstile section of the ride, a huge gigantic circle in the middle of this building here where you first are introduced to the Dreamfinder. You see his beautiful ship and you meet Figment for the first time. It was a very long section of the ride. I think it took maybe like 3 minutes or something like that. I don't know. It was a long ride. But anyway, it was a turnstile circle type part of the ride that is no longer in the current version. But this beam up here in the ImageWorks area is part of that old ride system, of that old turnstile. Additionally, the floor down here too, you can see it's on a raised platform and it's in a circle shape. That is part of the old ride too. It matches up with the pillar up at the top. At this point, I want to do a huge shout out to two of my most favorite Disney history video channels of all time, Defunctland as well as Yesterworld. Make sure you're subscribed to them, watch their content. They are both amazing. Like I said, they're literally like my most favorite history theme park YouTubers of all time. They do amazing work, and both of them did do videos on Journey into Imagination, the original version, as well as the history of what happened after that too. So huge shout out to them because I rewatched their videos before I made this one just to refresh myself on the history, and I totally forgot that the pillars up here and the platform down here were part of the ride system. So again, big shout out to them. Make sure you check out their channels if you want to learn more and if you want to learn more about Disney history in general. And obviously got to point out the fact that you can meet Figment today. Hooray. And actually, when I was here last week making this video poorly, I met Figment, so I'll put in a photo of that right here for you. It was so cool. And one of the coolest parts about it too was all of the kids that were in line in front of me and also after me wanting to meet Figment, wanting to give him a hug, not get his autograph, but give him a hug and get a photo with him and whatnot. I just think that's really cool that the kids today love Figment as well, even though obviously they never grew up with the old version of it, clearly. So I think that's awesome. We got to keep up the hype for Figment, right? Unfortunately, I am not a DVC member. I am not a Disney Vacation Club member. I haven't been up there since it's been turned into a lounge, but I did go up there a couple of times when I worked here. And at the time, it was literally just storage for the gift shop that they have down here. So there wasn't much going on up there, but yeah, now it's DVC Lounge. Used to be where the beautiful rainbow tunnel was, all of those really cool interactive things that you could do up there, what would make the ImageWorks that we have now look like a big old pile of crap, trust me. Also have to point out the gift shop because when I was a kid and the original version of this ride, there wasn't a gift shop in here. It was, this whole area again was just the unload area of it all, and then, you know, the way to get upstairs to the interactive area. So I think one of the reasons, one of our personal theories, my family's personal theories of why they changed it over too, is because how can you have a ride exit without a gift shop? It just doesn't make sense. So they had to add a gift shop. You know, it's Disney after all. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm happy to see the hype for Figment. I'm happy to see the merch for Figment. You know, we gotta keep letting them know that we want to see Figment here at Epcot as much as possible. And they do have a lot of really, really cute Figment merchandise. But you know what? They could have put this somewhere else. They didn't have to. I mean, look, they didn't close and change the first version of this ride to put in a gift shop. That is not the only reason. It was just always a theory that my family had about this ride. Another theory that we always had was because like I said earlier, the ride was unusually long. I don't remember how long it was, but a lot longer, certainly than what we have now, because they took out like 30% of the ride, but a lot longer than the average dark ride is. So that, coupled with the fact that up top, the interactive area was so popular, there was so much to do, it was really, really cool. People would spend a lot of time in this building alone. And if this building alone didn't have like a gift shop, if it didn't have, food carts and stuff like that, then how are people going to spend money at Disney? They can't do that if they're spending all of their time in one building, you know what I mean? So we always kind of thought maybe that was part of it too. They just wanted to shorten the ride to get more people out into the parks to buy the food, buy merchandise, do more things, etc., which honestly is a pretty lousy excuse, but I could totally see Disney doing something like that. So I don't know, that was just always a theory of ours. But yeah, so that's what we have today. That's what we've had for the past 24 plus years now. If you think that version of the ride is bad, which a lot of people do, it is infinitely worse with the lights on. Infinitely worse. It's not a very, very good ride. Now, at this point, it has become, I don't want to say a classic, but it kind of is, because it's the only place where you can see Figment. And I've come to appreciate this ride more and more, and honestly enjoy it more and more as the time has gone on. But it's not a good ride, like, objectively, just not a good ride. I can totally see people who don't know any of the history, the lore, no knowledge of the original version of what this ride was, coming here to Epcot and being like, what the heck is this? Why does everybody love Figment? He's annoying, and he's just on this one stupid little ride. Like, why is he a thing? Like, I totally could get that and see that, and it makes sense. And I've had people say that before. It's because he was just so deeply rooted in Epcot history, and you really have to look at that old ride footage to see that, and to see why I think a lot of people really, really still love Figment today. Now, all that being said, like I just said, for the Figment meet and greet, lots of kids in there, really excited to meet Figment, so obviously the hype is still there, and I do know a lot of people who love this ride. And again, I'm part of them now. If Disney ever decides to do a refurb, if they decide that they're going to shut it down and redo the ride, I would be cautiously optimistic. It would literally be probably the first time in history that I would be like, okay, this could be good, as far as them closing down a ride and refurbing it, because I think that we have firmly established that we want to see Figment here, that he's important to us. The Festival of the Arts that they have here at Epcot is basically like Figment's festival. He's all over the merchandise. And I think if they redid this ride and they took away Figment, people are going to be really, really pissed. They'd probably burn it to the ground. So I don't think that is an option for Disney. I think whenever they decide to change it up, they're gonna put Figment in there. I would even guess that they would bring back Dreamfinder, but who knows? I would probably say it's probably curtains for Eric Idle's character, Dr. Nigel Channing, unfortunately, which I have grown to love as well. I love Eric Idle and I love Monty Python, so that would actually be really sad for me when I sit down and think about it. But overall, I do think that the ride needs to be redone. It needs to be something better. It needs to be what we all know that it could be. Will we ever see that? Who's to say? Honestly, probably not for a really, really long time, if I had to guess. Now, as far as cast member stories go, like I said, I worked here December, January, during the holidays, which makes sense. That's usually when they're hiring people. So I was here for Christmas, I was here for New Year's. It was the first time I think the first time I've ever spent a New Year's here at Disney, and wow, was that an experience, especially here at Epcot where, you know, drinking is abound. But it was also really cool because I got to see the fireworks over the countries, which is really, really cool. So I'm grateful for that because otherwise I don't think I would ever have come here on my own volition to see New Year's. But yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot of stories that I have here, honestly. I enjoyed working Journey into Imagination. I have a special connection with it. I've always had a special connection with it because I grew up with this ride in general and with Figment and whatnot. But the fact that I got to work here makes that connection all the more special. To say that Figment was my old boss here is really cool, and just to be able to say that, yeah, I worked this ride, this iconic ride, and walked around this iconic building and, you know, saw behind the scenes and all of that stuff is something that I will cherish with me for the rest of my life for sure. So yeah, looking back on it, I thoroughly enjoyed my time here. Probably the coolest bit of information that I can share about my time working here is the fact that inside of this building, in the maintenance bay for the vehicles, for the ride, is where, well, there's a machine in there where they clean every single one of the 3D glasses here on Disney property. So, oh boy, which ones are those? So, Tough to Be a Bug, the theater that they're showing here, the movies that they're showing here, those 3D glasses, as well as Muppet Vision 3D, and all of the other stuff that I'm forgetting. Whatever other 3D attractions that there are on Disney property, all of those glasses, thank goodness, get cleaned. And they get cleaned right here inside of this building. This was part of it wasn't part of the rotation of this ride, of this pavilion, but it was part of our duties here. When you work here, that is one of the things that you get assigned to do, is to go down to that maintenance bay and clean those 3D glasses. I've cleaned many 3D glasses in there in my time, and it was one of those positions where you either loved it or you hated it. I initially hated it. I grew to absolutely love it because you spend essentially an entire hour backstage, not interacting with anybody, doing a mindless factory job. And I grew to absolutely love it. Now, it was very hot down there. There's no air conditioning, and the machine makes it really hot and really humid too, because obviously there's water involved. So it wasn't pleasant. It wasn't pleasant by any means, but it wasn't that bad either. I actually really did like it. So I don't know, I just thought that was cool. I was really excited to share that bit of information for you. All of those 3D glasses get cleaned right here, and I actually did confirm that with one of the cast members a couple years ago because I was curious if that was still a thing, and they did say, yeah, we still clean the glasses here. So very cool. I don't know. I think the most important, if you take away anything from this video, take away the fact that we do actually clean the glasses here, those 3D glasses at Disney. All right, next we're going to switch gears. We're gonna start talking about the now defunct Captain EO that used to sit in here at the Magic Eye Theater. And this is what they are now showing, these 3 little shorts. 2 of these are Pixar shorts. The one at the top is a Mickey one. Okay, how does one explain what Captain EO is? First of all, and once again, I sound like a broken record here, but if you never see it and you're truly curious, it is on YouTube. We actually just watched it again just the other day. I watched it with my fiance Tampa Jay. He had never seen it before, so we YouTubed it. It is on YouTube, so if you want to see it and experience the crazy fever dream that was Captain EO, go for it. All joking aside here, it was actually an incredibly well done I don't even know what to call it. It's not a movie. It was like 17 minutes long. Film, I guess, film. It was incredibly well done. It was directed by Francis Coppola, and it was produced and partly written by George Lucas as well. And obviously it stars Michael Jackson too, and he had a pretty heavy hand in all of that as well. You know, with the music and all of that stuff too. Angelica Houston is in it. This is like the most 80s thing that you'll ever see. And it is very much, you can see everybody's hand in the film. You can totally see how George Lucas inspired a lot of it, and you can totally see how Michael Jackson inspired a lot of it. It's a space sci-fi sort of thing, and it was really, really good. So that's what played here. Now, this, I don't know the dates. I don't know the dates off the top of my head, but this was here back in the 80s, and then they took it away and put in Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. And then when Michael Jackson passed away in 2009, they put Captain EO back in this place for a tribute. And it was actually here for about 5 years until they changed it into whatever else came after that. I think it's just been a 3-film sort of thing from this moment on. But anyway, Captain EO, this theater here, is part of the whole rotation of the Journey into Imagination ride as well. So if you worked at the ride Journey into Imagination, you also worked at Captain EO, and you would work, you know, the same thing every day. Both of those attractions every day. So yeah, Captain EO was a huge part of my experience working here as well. It's a theater attraction, so there isn't a whole lot to say about it, to be quite honest. It wasn't anything super complicated or really even too much worth mentioning, to be honest. It was a basic theater attraction. So yeah, anyway, we're gonna go inside of there and I'll explain a few more things. I already watched it last week when I did this video for the first time, and the theater still moves. I think I mentioned before, it's on a hydraulic system, so the whole theater shakes with the special effects that go on with the movie, and it actually made me a little nauseous. Like, I have pretty bad vertigo issues and motion issues in general, so I didn't know that the theater was still moving. I assumed that it didn't, because why the heck would it? But nope, they gotta make it move. So yeah, we're not gonna watch it. I can't show any of it anyway, so it doesn't matter. But we're gonna walk through the theater, and I'll just mention a couple of things. The inside of this building really has not changed very much. Pretty sure this is like the original carpeting, certainly the original architecture. Like, it hasn't changed at all. They're just, yeah, showing Pixar and Disney films in here, little short films. Also, you can do there's a Mickey and Minnie meet and greet over here. People are lining up, getting their photo with the mice, so that's pretty cool too. We're actually in a last call, so this is the preview area, same screens, all of that stuff, sloping thing. And then yeah, we're gonna walk through the theater and then we're gonna walk right on out. This worked out well. Cool. Here it is. Actually gonna pick a row with no one in it so we can walk across. And you can see it's on the hydraulic system in here too. Okay, here we go. We're going across, same seating too. Same seats. And we got our 3D glasses, even though we're walking right out the door. That's fine. All right, sorry for that run through, but I really didn't want to watch it, and I really didn't want to wait for the next show, because that's literally all I wanted to show anyway. It was just the inside of the theater in the pre-show area. And then yeah, this whole exit area, exactly the same. And I feel bad I just shouldn't have taken these, but they'll get double cleaned. There's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, not a whole lot to operating this part. One thing I will say is that I've seen Captain EO now probably, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. Because one of the things that you had to do, one of the positions, was literally sit in the theater with everybody and watch it with everybody else, so you can help them outside of the theater if they want to exit in the middle of it, which happened often because, you know, some kids get really scared by the special effects, etc., etc. So I've seen Captain EO a million times. I used to be able to like quote it word for word. I can't really anymore. I used to like even practically know the dances that were in there too. Man, yeah, I've seen it so many times. And with that, I think that is going to do it for this video. I think I covered everything that I wanted to. This isn't, like I said, a perfect history. It's not a perfect retelling of events. And it's not even a perfect, here's absolutely everything that you need to know about Journey into Imagination and Figment and all of that stuff and all the Easter eggs and blah, 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 blah. I know for a fact that I left things out, and it's fine. It's not a big deal. I got my point across, I think. One last thing that I wanted to bring up here, though. There's a long story here, so don't, like, stick with me, please. There's a point, I promise. But yesterday we were meeting up with our pals, Chad and Venessa from 2 Tickets to Adventure, who have a YouTube channel, so definitely check it out. They're amazing, wonderful people. But we were having dinner with them, and we were talking about Figment and stuff, and just Disney in general, and they brought up a very good point, which I hadn't really, like, fully thought about before, but right now we live in a culture of theme park enthusiasts, vloggers, influencers, all of that stuff, social media in general, has really boomed the whole theme park enthusiast sort of thing. And with that, we expect a lot of new stuff. We expect things to keep changing, to keep updating. We look forward to the new cupcake that they're putting out. We look forward to the new ride, to the new land, to the new theme park. Whatever new thing that they can come up with, any theme park at all. And I think with that has put a lot of pressure on theme parks in general to keep producing new things, to keep changing things and updating them and all of that stuff. And that's all fine and good, but what about the history? What about the history of things? What if it's something that doesn't need to be changed and updated? What if it's something that is perfectly fine as it is, but they have decided to just totally erase and pave over and just put up something new just for the sake of it? You know, Journey into Imagination, if this tale sounds familiar to you of a beloved ride that really and truly had no problems, that they just completely decide to, you know what, let's gut it and just make it something totally different, and not only that, but far less superior as well. Yeah, that should sound familiar because they keep doing that. They have done it in the past, and they're continuing to do it now. I'm looking at you, Dino Land. So, it's nothing new to Disney. It certainly isn't. And unfortunately, it's just going to keep happening. And so with that, I want to really consciously, and I've been doing this, but now I really want to consciously start focusing more on Disney history, theme park deep dives, and the lore of stuff, as opposed to only covering new things, which I rarely did anyway to begin with. So honestly, it's nothing new, but I guess I've realized the importance of telling these stories. I think we need more people out there with channels, with platforms, telling these stories, reminding people of the history, informing people of the history, of the good things about what we have now and what we used to have, as opposed to only focusing on the new, only focusing on how can this be improved, how can we add this IP to that thing, etc., etc. Because the more and more that we do that, and the more and more that we put that message out there, Disney and other theme parks are getting that message, and they are destroying what we love. Or they're destroying what I love and what a lot of other people love. I know a lot of people don't necessarily agree with me on this, but I personally think that there are certain rides, certain attractions, certain lands that don't need to be touched. They're just fine how they are. So why? There's so many other things that we could focus our attention on that do need to be changed, that do need to be updated desperately, and they're not getting done. So yeah, I don't know. I wanted to throw that in there because I think that that's really important. It's another big reason why I wanted to fire up the camera today and do this, because I want to keep telling these stories, sharing my memories, sharing the history, and yeah, just letting that be the message of my platform here, instead of yay yippee change, which again, I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, and there's really no, I'm not really here to dissuade anybody. I'm just here to share my story and my point of view, and that's it. You can take it or leave it. But anyway, all that being said, Journey into Imagination, Captain EO / Magic Eye Theater / Imagination Pavilion in general, the troubled history, and where we are now, the lore, the history of it all. In my experience here as a cast member, wouldn't trade it for anything. It was a lot of fun. I love this part of Epcot. It is really amazing, and I love Figment. And honestly, I love the ride that we have now too. I'll always miss the first version of it. Like I said, I grew up with it, have so many fun memories riding that with my mom. It's so fun and so I guess nostalgic, and such a big part of my childhood, honestly, that like I could cry just thinking about it. It's one of the things that makes me the most sad. The changing of this ride is, in my opinion, the worst thing Disney has ever done, and I'll never forgive him for it. I'll never forgive him for it. But thankfully, you know, we have the version that we have now. At least Figment's in there, and you know what? I love Eric Idle too, and I don't think I could say it's a classic, but it's, you know, it's one of those things that we come to expect here at Epcot. And I can still ride it with my family, with my friends, and enjoy it with them and create new memories today. So there's that as well. All that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. I sure do hope that you enjoyed it, and I really, really appreciate it, especially if you made it all the way to the end here. You're a rock star, and I appreciate you so much. This is a whole channel, so if you haven't subscribed and you want to, if you want to see more content like this, please subscribe and let me know down below. Give it a thumbs up if you want. That helps me out a lot too. And if you like more deep dives, theme park history, things like that, I have a whole playlist as well. And we're going to keep doing videos like this in the future too. So again, thank you all for watching. That's all I have to say. Anything you want to say, Figment? Keep using your imagination. I had a feeling you were going to say that. I had a feeling you were gearing up for something like that. Okay. That's it. I'm done. Thank you all so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Have a lot more adventures coming up, as I always say, and we'll see you all a little bit later. Bye-bye, everybody. Keep using your imagination, as Figment said. See you later. Bonus features. I'm rewarding myself with sushi. Back in Japan. And a green tea, ice cream tea. If you've never had this before back in Japan, oh boy. So good. It's at the quick service restaurant. I'm so hungry. I'm so ready. I'm so excited. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you later.